Good evening, darlings. I received the following anonymous message which says, Dear Lord Thronville, I was wondering if you could take a moment to speak about your mother. I know you've spoken about other members of your family, but you seem to have avoided her, and so it's piqued my interest. Darling, there's a reason, of course, that I was sort of avoiding speaking too much about my mother. I was still rather young when she passed, and so I think I'll just sort of speak more about what type of person she was, as opposed to getting into some of the other aspects that are a little bit less happy. Let's see. As far as sort of her personality, my mother was very calm, very outgoing, typically happy person, just all around, always had a smile on her face, always wanted to help people. She was very into sort of organizing things and getting her hands on various projects. She really wanted to make sure that everyone around her was as comfortable as possible, and that didn't just mean her family, even extended family, but literally anyone that was around. It was very important to her to make sure that no one that she came in contact with was unhappy, and I really I always admired that about my mother. And she was, despite all of that and being a very kind person, and generally I would say she was a very calm person, she was very stubborn though. When she had her mindset on something, it was going to be her way or none at all. And so that seems like perhaps that maybe she wouldn't be a great match for my father, who was very much the same way. I've spoken about that before. But there was something about the way she could speak that she could make my father do just about anything. There were a few things where he'd put his foot down, but even then she sort of could wear him down over a while and make it her way anyhow, and I never understood how she did it. I always wanted to, of course, and I think it'd be just such a great skill to have learned, but I never did get a chance to sort of learn from her techniques. That said, I would say that, she was very invested in the well-being of our kingdom, and she was very excited about the fact that we were sort of taking on the culture of the Sylvan Elves when we moved into the Greenwood, and she was very pleased about just how how different things were. She expected there to be some minor differences, but I think anytime something was a little more different than she expected, it just thrilled her to find out just how different even the smallest little things that seemed sort of more mundane could be. And she just took such a pleasure in all of that. And she was very big into the preservation of culture and history. And, we sort of could have made it so that all of our subjects sort of were first forced to learn Sindarin, but due to my mother's sort of influence, shall we say, she really thought it was important for people to retain their own language, so she really wanted to focus on Sylvan being the most widely spoken, and just Sindarin was sort of an extra thing, sort of the way I think many cultures will take sort of a dead language, even though of course Sindarin is not a dead language, but it was more sort of as an enhancement, an enrichment, shall we say, of education, sort of a means of being able to communicate more and to learn more, as opposed to sort of being the standard. And it was just so important to her to really have us, as the royal family, to really become, for all intents and purposes, Sylvan in any other aspect other than, of course, by blood, which we can't change. But for her, it was just so important just to make sure that the people, perhaps because they were the ones who gave us this office, but she really thought it was important to give back to them and to make sure that it really was their kingdom at the end of the day. And so, you know, I just always really loved that about my mother. She was such a beautiful, wonderful person, and you know, she could bake like no one's business. I've never tasted anything half as good as what she used to bake, just in our own kitchens. And you know, she would help out the servants when she had the chance. You know, she didn't just expect that she was the queen and she would just sit back. She really wanted to be a part of it all, and it was important to her to help out. So for all the holidays that would come up, she would be in the kitchen with the rest of the kitchen hands. And you know, a lot of times my father was quite cross with her, because of course there were many other things that needed to be done, but she thought it was important that every single person in our lands had a chance to taste the food that she cooked, which is sort of an incredible goal, but she did it every single time. And you know, I don't know many people who would have gone through the effort for that. So you know, I just have a lot of fond memories of her, and the little treats she used to sneak me were also just such a joy to me growing up. And although she made sure that I stuck to my studies no matter what, even when I really didn't want to, education was just so important to her. And I like to think, since she never did get a chance to meet Legolas, that she would be sort of proud with how he's turned out, you know. I do often, if I sort of don't know what to do with him, if there's something that he needs that I can't seem to give, I always have to stop and sort of think of what my mother would have done in that situation. And it has stayed my hand when I would have done something that I shouldn't have. And it's really, it has been very useful. I feel like she's sort of still watching over me in a way, even though I know that's not the case. But I still feel quite close to her, even though it's been so many centuries since then. And I just wish Legolas had had a chance to meet her. I really do. And I think my father would have been less brash in his actions in the War of the Ring if my mother had still been around at the end there. But I don't want to dwell on that, darling. So thank you again for your question, and cheers, ta-ta.